Hello class. This video I will start writing the C++ code. As always, we need two files, a header file and a C++ file. In the header file, we're responsible for doing all of our declarations and definitions, and also including our three libraries that we need to use the printf, scanf, and math functions in our program. Once again, the program design is similar to the previous program. The only difference is this step here is going to be completed by our function. So we usually declare and define our functions in the header file. We could put them in the C++ file, but to better organize our work, it's good to put functions in the header file. As you can see, this header file is very similar to the header file in the previous project. However, in this new header file, we have to add our declarations and prototypes for our functions. If you recall, during our program design, we created this prototype for our function. So here I will type that in. So the prototype for the function requires that you have one input of type float. The function will complete its process, and then it will return the results back to the main program of type float. Now, after we created the prototype, we will now begin to define the steps of the function. We simply copy the same name as the prototype, but this time we have to create a variable to save the value that is passed from the main program to the function. In this example here, I will use the same variable as the main program. It's okay because the square root function has its own copies of its own variables. So even though they're the same name, this number belongs to the main program and this number belongs to the function. Just like we do in the main program, you have to create open and close brackets to indicate the procedure area. In this program, there are many ways to write the procedure, but I'm going to simplify it by combining the return statement with the results of the calculation. Using the square root function from the math library, I'm simply going to take the number that I have received from the main program and take the square root of that number. And the return statement will take that number and return it back to the main program. So this is done. Now, the main program. If you recall, the main program follows the same procedure as before, where it initializes its variables, displays a welcome message, proceeds to ask the user to enter information, then after that it will get that information that's entered by the user. So this command scanf's job is to wait for someone to type in numbers from the keyboard and press the enter key. Once the enter key is pressed, then the value that is on the computer will be saved in this variable. In the previous program, we wanted to be sure that the number was greater than or equal to 0. If it was greater than or equal to 0, we would like to take the square root of that number. But this time, we're not going to take the square root of the number directly. We're going to ask our function to take the square root of that number. How do you do that? You simply type the name, then put in whatever value that you want to pass to the function. We would like to pass the number that was entered by the user. So what will happen is that number, whatever it may be, will go to the function. The function will then take the square root of that number. Then that number will be returned back to the main program. And then finally that number that is returned to the main program will be saved as number 2. Then the program continues to print the results of the calculation. Let's demonstrate the function. As mentioned before, the program simply waits for the user to enter a value. Then the results of the value will be printed on the console for the user to evaluate. The user does not see any difference between this project and the previous project. But we know as programmers that now the calculation is being done by a function instead of the main program. Thank you.